Have you ever wondered what happened to the wives who loved fallen angels more than they loved God's rules? Get ready to discover how their angelic husbands turned against heaven and how these brave but foolish women suffered because of it. You'll learn why the Nephilim, the giant children born from this forbidden love, were wiped out by a terrible flood, and how Archangel Michael stepped in to take charge. But the biggest shock? What he did to punish the wives afterward. Stay with us to find out how their souls became sirens and why they still haunt our stories today. You know how sometimes one look can change everything? Well, this story is about the biggest case of love at first sight gone wrong in history. Picture this. Way up in heaven, angels were doing their thing, singing God's praises, keeping the universe running smoothly. They had one job: serve God. Simple, right? But then something happened that wasn't supposed to. These mighty angels looked down at earth and saw something that made them stop in their tracks. Human women. Not just any women. These women were beautiful in a way that was different from anything in heaven. They were real. They were raw. They were human. Here's where things get interesting. These angels, who were supposed to be above earthly desires, started feeling something new. It was a pull they couldn't explain. Every time they looked down, that feeling got stronger. Their bright heavenly glow began to dim as thoughts they weren't supposed to have filled their minds. Down on earth, life went on as usual. Women worked, laughed, and loved, completely unaware that mighty beings above were breaking every rule in the book just to watch them. But something strange was happening to these women too. They felt watched, special, like something incredible was about to happen. The air was charged, like the moment before a massive storm. The angels knew they were playing with fire. Every time they considered leaving heaven, they reminded themselves of their purpose, to be God's servants, heaven's warriors. But that pull kept getting stronger. They started asking questions they had never dared to before. What if we could feel what humans feel? What if we could love like they do? Their hearts, made to love only God, were now filled with desires they couldn't control. Each day, more angels joined in, watching earth below. Each day, their resolve weakened a little more. The choice was tearing them apart. Stay true to their purpose or give in to these new feelings. Everything was about to change. Heaven and earth were never meant to mix like this. But these angels, who had stood by God's throne and witnessed the birth of the stars, were ready to give it all up. For what? For a chance at human love. Little did they know, this choice would set off a chain of events that would shake both heaven and earth to their core. They were about to learn the hard way that some rules aren't meant to be broken, no matter how tempting the reason. The moment these angels stepped onto earth, magic happened, but not the good kind. Imagine the most beautiful person you've ever seen. Now, multiply that by 1,000. That's what these fallen angels looked like when they arrived. They didn't just walk, they glided. They didn't just speak. Their voices sang like music. Light seemed to dance around them, making everything else look dull and lifeless in comparison. When they appeared in villages and towns, people stopped in their tracks. How could they not? It was like staring at the sun, painful to look at, but impossible to look away. The women who saw them felt something they had never felt before. This wasn't just a crush or attraction. It was like being under a spell. These weren't just handsome strangers passing through town. They were perfect in every way, or at least they seemed to be. But you know how they say, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is? That's exactly what was happening here. These weren't just incredibly handsome men. They were angels who had turned their backs on heaven. And if you looked closely enough, you could see something wasn't quite right. Their smiles held secrets darker than night. Their eyes, though beautiful, were ancient and deep in a way no humans could ever be. The women felt drawn in, like moths to a flame. How do you say no to someone who literally glows with heavenly light? Who knows everything about you before you even speak? Who can promise you things no human man ever could? But here's the scary part. The more time these women spent with the fallen angels, the more they changed too. It was as if they absorbed some of that otherworldly glow. They started seeing the world differently. Regular men looked plain and boring compared to these divine beings. The fallen angels knew exactly what they were doing. They chose the most beautiful women, the ones who had caught their eyes from heaven. They used their angelic powers to appear as everything these women had ever dreamed of. It was like a fairy tale romance, but with a horror story twist. Each time a fallen angel took a human wife, it sent ripples through both heaven and earth. These weren't just marriages, they were unions that were never meant to happen. And the children that would come from these unions? That's where our story takes an even darker turn. Want to hear what happened next? The terrifying fate of the Nephilim, the unimaginable punishment that awaited the wives, and the earth-shattering battle that followed? Make sure you're subscribed because you won't want to miss what happens when Archangel Michael steps in to clean up the mess and the punishment he delivers to those who defied heaven. What happens next will leave you speechless.